So are you going to help me preach? Are you going to go sit with your mama? Huh? You want to go sit with your mama? Here, mama.
Put it down.
Put on.
Come here, you. Like I told you.
Okay. Remember last time that we planted seeds? You weren't here, so you don't know. I know. So did your seeds grow? Did your seeds grow? Yeah. Yeah? Cool. Are they still growing? Yeah? Cool. You guys are taking good care of them. You did. We can fix you up, though. So anyway, the very first thing that we talked about, remember, was that path. Remember the board that we had that P glued onto? And we called it the beaten path, remember? So that's Mark 4:4. And it says, and he sowed, and some seed fell on the beaten path, and the birds came and devoured it. That's Ginger paraphrase, of course. So let's think about this a minute. The beaten path, let me show you what we're talking about here, Pam. I still have some. So this is what we had last time. And we can get you fixed up and you can take some home. This doesn't have any seeds and it doesn't have all the dirt in it. But this is the beaten path. Okay. And there was the 4 types of ground. Remember, this is the parable of the sower. Okay. So let's think about the beaten path. A beaten path is a road, and it's typically busy. So let's think about I-49 coming up, and then the road to Anderson, and then this gravel road out here. Most beaten paths have paving of some sort, and they're so packed that nothing grows on them. So, is your pea growing? It's not, is it? No. It's so hard. It can't get in there, okay? So, yes. We actually glued it on so it wouldn't roll off. And so nothing grows on that. And then the sides of the road, like out here, the road crews come by, and hopefully they mow, and maybe they spray. So there's brush and weeds, and hopefully they get rid of that. But it's not a good place for a seed to grow, not if you're wanting to harvest something, right? Another thing about a beaten path is the idea that no one really pays much attention to anybody else going down the same road unless that other person does something out of the ordinary, like enter without any regard for whoever's there or doesn't use a blinker, right? Okay. So switching lanes without a blinker, and the driver just kind of gets on autopilot. Have you heard that word? Autopilot? Yeah. You just kind of zone out, drive along, autopilot. Set the cruise controls. Yeah. Set the cruise control, and you head on down the road. And we miss a lot of things that way. We go too fast to see the details. We go too fast really to get adjusted to the speed. We go so fast that we're not aware of what we're doing moment by moment. Things like the rubber's wearing off our tires as we go down the road. Gas is consumed. Miles go by. Thoughts we have, or in this case, any of those things can be seeds that we're dropping on the way. So I wondered why this sower let his seeds drop on that beaten path. Maybe he has a tiny hole in his seed and doesn't even know it in his sack. When we introduced the concept of the different seed plantings, we talked about how the beaten path was one without focus. I don't know if you remember that or not. So we can say that going down this path on autopilot doesn't have focus. Without focus, time, distance, events, landscapes, all just kind of fade and kind of blur into one picture. Consider that if we're supposed to be counting our seeds as we go, we wouldn't have any idea how many seeds we dropped unless we knew how many we started with and then counted them again when we ended up. But even if we did that, we wouldn't know for sure where they landed. If our going is like that, and we're going down a road to a job, we should keep our seeds until we get to that place of work. But if we dropped them all on the road as we go, we're not prepared for our job for that day, even if we get there in one piece. We can call this, we can give it a term, okay? It's a really bad term. We can call it a failure. Have you heard that word? A failure? A friend of mine posted on Facebook the other day a picture of her shoes. She had managed to put on 2 different shoes from 2 different pairs. She had gone to town. She'd gone to the grocery store, the drugstore, the gas station, and McDonald's, all without noticing that she had on 2 different shoes. It wasn't until she got home and was unpacking her car that she looked down and realized her shoes came from different pairs. The seeds that we plant along the way are kind of like that. We don't really notice until something happens that we pay attention. So I want to propose to you tonight that we need failures. I don't think the sower deliberately put his seed on the beaten path or the weedy sprayed ditches on the sides, but some got there anyway. Not that he was doing what he was supposed to with them is a failure. It's like having that hole in the sack, right? They're just happening, right? So let's think about what could be a failure. Is it something that you tried that didn't work? Have you done that ever? Something that you tried that didn't work? Yeah. Is it something that you forgot to try? Is it something you put effort into that didn't work out? So, and another question, what happens to us when we fail? Can we just shrug it off? Do we grieve? Do we get angry? The verse does not say that the sower reached down and picked up the seeds that didn't sow. Remember we talked about that a little bit ago, about if he picked them up, counted them again and stuff? But he didn't do that. And in a way it seems kind of odd to me, because if I have a $20 bill and it falls out of my pocket and I see it fall out of my pocket, I'm for sure going to stop and turn around and go pick that puppy up, right? I can think of a lot of more better uses for my dollars laying on the ground, just hoping to grow. But if we keep in mind how fast we go these days, it's easier to understand that there's just no way we can stop and pick up all those seeds. So let's talk about these seeds. Seeds are anything that have the potential to grow, like you guys, or shrivel and die. What can you think of that shrivels and dies? Can you think of anything? What could that be?
Berries and flowers.
You're right, yes. Especially if you pick them, right? Yes.
Morel mushrooms.
Leaves. You're what?
Morel mushrooms if you don't pick them in time.
Morel mushrooms if you don't pick them in time. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So seeds can be anything. They can be seeds, can be money, can be love. It can be time. It can be your thoughts, or the gas or the rubber on your tires. The point is, there will be time when the seed falls on the beaten path. You're not going to be able to stop that. And that seed is prevented by circumstances outside of its control from doing its job. Have we considered how sowing seeds don't work? Now let's think about how they might work, okay? Here's the sower, a person who's going along, putting what he has into the opportunities that are there. He's trying to pay attention not to let the seeds fall out of his sack. Whatever he's doing it on purpose. It may be something like the kindness of offering to watch the kids for a worn-out mama. It may be buying gas for a family that's down and out. It may be accepting an award for a job well done that makes a difference to other people at your job or school. It may be the financial return on the calves you bought one year and sold the next. It might even be your garden stuff. The point is, the person, the sower, has seed, and if he's tossing it around, that seed can go places that he doesn't even know it's going. And some of it won't make a difference. It won't amount to anything. There'll be nothing that you can do about it unless you go and pick everyone back up and put them back in your bag. Can you imagine? That would be all you'd be doing, wouldn't it? You wouldn't really be planting seeds. If they were falling out of your bag and you were turning up every once in a while and going all the way back over there and picking them back up and putting them in your bag and more falling out as you're going all the time, that's all you'd be doing is picking up seeds. So we need failures. Failures help us focus on what's important. There's a saying, if you keep doing things the same way and expect different results, that's insanity. We chuckle about that, and we know it's true, yet we just keep on doing the same things and hoping for different results, don't we? On our beaten path, where we're just dropping off those seeds, sometimes we see a yield sign. And that yield sign says, excuse me, not so fast here. Or it can be a stop sign, and it can say, stop, or else. Or it can even be a U-turn, right? A U-turn says, turn around, go back the other way. Failures can even be complete roadblocks, no farther at all in this direction. How do we know when we've got it right? How do we know that our seed's not being wasted? Well, what if we saw that we were putting seed down on the beaten path? Oh, we already talked about that. So, we need trust. After we do our failures, all the seeds back there, we need trust. Now, something really incredible about this particular verse is that it said that the birds came down and devoured some of that seed, right? So here's these seeds, and they're falling on the beaten path. If that bird comes down and gets that seed, and it doesn't digest in his tummy, and he flies over there above your garden, and what do birds do when they fly? Yeah. So that's what happens, right? Is that seed actually wasted? Or is it a momentary pause? It got there, right? So we need to trust. When we accept our failures as only part of what we do and who we are, it's easier to let them go and move on to trying to get them into the right places. The idea of the bird carrying off the seed she sees on the path and picks it up and takes it to a place where it can grow helps us to know that just because that first seed landed on the beaten path does not mean that it will never, 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 ever be part of a bigger plan. Just because we have a failure at this moment does not mean that everything we do is wrong or that we're defective. We need to trust that God does not plan for us to have failures all the time. We need to trust that if what we do is not working out, there is a different way. Something else to do, a different way to go thinking about it. Have you ever discovered that you were wrong about something? Boy, I have. Can you say with me that it was both unpleasant and a relief? Unpleasant because none of us wants to be wrong. But what a relief to know that if we are wrong, we can change something and no longer have the frustration of nothing going the way that it should. Trusting means that we can be corrected, and we can trust God that we can be corrected to help us understand what we do. That brings us to depending on God. Seeds don't grow unless there's something for them to grow in, right? They won't grow on that board. They grow, you said they were growing in the good dirt, right? Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of different soils, just like in our little tubs there. Take clay, for example, like that red dirt out there. In Arkansas, they want that red dirt that we have so abundantly. It makes a really good road base, really hard. It makes a good house foundation base. It's a dense clay with lots of rocks of all different size. And if it's used in a good way, like the roads, it's a good soil. In Texas, there's a soil called caliche. Remember about caliche? You guys know anything about caliche? Okay, let me tell you. It's kind of a whitish gray looking soil, and it powders up real fine when it's dry. It's so fine that when people drive up and down the road, it just plumes up. And it's so much that the trees on the side of the road look like it's been snowed on them. But when it's wet, it's a whole nother story. It'll cling to the bottom of your boots 6 inches thick when you're trying to walk. So your feet get so heavy that you can't pick them up, or they tip over and you get a twisted ankle. And it grows buffalo grass and live oak trees, but it doesn't grow a garden, and it doesn't grow strawberries. So the soil has to be right. So let's go back a little bit. Failures lead us to focus and asking questions, which leads us to trust God for the answers, which helps us depend on Him. So when we know what we're supposed to be planting seeds and nothing is happening the way it should, and we know it, don't we, when that happens, we have a choice. We can continue to do what we do and still have no results, or we can fall on our knees spiritually and physically and ask God, what's going wrong? You know, He doesn't want us to stay in failure mode. But how many times do we stay in failure mode because we do not know what else to do? We just keep hoping and praying that things will change. We cannot see that by depending on God for a few things, we can change and our circumstances can change. So we need to depend on God. In 2 Corinthians 9:10, this is really pretty cool. I don't know if you guys know this is in your Bible, but it says, "He who supplies the seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness." Interesting. That's God's job. Our job is to keep sowing. Even if we have a tiny hole in our bag, we just keep sowing. Our job is to believe Him for the seed, to believe Him for the harvest, to believe Him that by doing the work of sowing the seed, we're adding to righteousness. From what we've learned about seeds on the beaten path, He has promised, let's look at this carefully, He has promised to keep us moving forward because we don't like failures. He's promised to keep seeds in our bag, even if there's a hole in it. He's promised that there will always be enough seed to plant, grow a harvest, and have something to eat. He's promised that if we'll just keep planting seeds, He can help us with focus and direction because we trust and depend on Him. He'll take care of the rest. He's promised that just by chance, if we let go of a seed on that beaten path and it was meant to be someplace else, He can have a bird go down and scoop it up and take it there. He's promised that He'll take care of us if we trust and depend on Him. Father God, we don't get it right so many times. We think we know exactly what to do, and we get upset and frustrated and depressed when what we think is right just goes so wrong. Sometimes we keep walking down the path and never see the results that should be there for us. Sometimes we only trust what we already know. We don't want to step off that path. It's scary out there. Sometimes we feel we don't have time to go off on little rabbit trails of adventure. We're obligated to perform certain tasks in a certain way and at a certain time. Sometimes we depend on what we know instead of asking You. Sometimes we trust our emotions more than you. Help us, Lord, to become excited about our failures, especially the ones we keep making the same way over and over for the same reasons. That must mean you're telling us something specific. And if we'll take the time and listen, we can exchange it for what it is that you have in mind. Help us to trust you. If we keep planting seeds where they cannot grow, you can take some of them other places. Help us to trust you that if we stubbornly stay on the beaten path, there just might be a different path you want us on. Help us to depend on you. After a while, that bag with a hole in it, plus all the effort the seeding takes on us, puts a serious strain and makes our bag empty. But if we let you do what you say and take you at your word, you will keep our bag full, our harvest happening, and we'll have enough to eat and be filled. Thank you, Father, for the changes we can make just by knowing the purpose of the beaten path is for us to use our failure and move us forward, focusing, trusting, and depending on you. Amen. There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place, and I know that it's the Spirit of the Lord. There are sweet expressions on each face, and I know that it's the presence of the Lord. Sweet Holy Spirit, sweet Heavenly Dove, you're right here with us, filling us with